Good afternoon, class. My name is Dareus Morris, and this is my project. I decided to go to the recipe pages, and I titled it Dareus's Go-To Recipes. So let's go and get started, but before we go into my code, I would like to go over the transform and transition elements in CSS, because those are mostly used. So transform allows you to take an element or a block and allows you to move it from one side of the screen to the other, allows you to rotate it, to skew it, scale it, whatever you want to do. The only problem with using the transform element though, or transform property, is that when you do it, you don't really get to see it happen. It kind of does it instantaneously. There's no animation for it, there's no transition for it, and that's where the transition function will come in. So when you use transition, it allows you to see it happen. It's like a lot more smooth. So let's say we add a transition function to our transform function, or put them together, and we see it. We see the element. We'll actually see the element move from one side of the screen to the other, or we'll actually see it physically rotate. And so transition has a couple of properties of its own. There's a transition which encompasses everything. There's transition delay, transition duration, transition property, and transition timing function. My sources are W3 schools. So let's go and get into it. The index.html, which is my home page, it contains one big div acting as a container, titled card-container. And then there's another div under it called card, which houses two more divs, which is the image box div, which stores an image, and there's the content div, which stores the information I put in there, which is going to appear under the image. And in the content div, it's going to have an unordered list of websites containing the recipes that I've listed, of the foods that I've listed. I have external CSS and inline CSS. I reference the CSS sheet style.css, which is the one I came up with, or the one I made. So as you can see here, here's the div class with the card container, which is encompassing everything. We have div class card, which has the image box in it, which will contain the image, as you can see, image source. And we're going to close that out. And then we have the content div, which has the information, the unordered list with the links and everything. And so now we have the style.css sheet. There's the body, which has the background image. We're just going to take up the whole window. Our container has a flex display and I've decided to justify the content to the center and align the items in the center. I also made a flex wrap. I made a wrap so that way when the window gets smaller, the box will actually go into more of a container if you like make it more narrow, but the original direction of it is a row. And so I've listed it all here. I also have a hover element, so when you hover over each of these cards, it'll actually scale in, which means it'll expand in all directions. And then I also gave the image box a z-index of 10, which means that it will, on the z-axis, it will appear above the content box. And you'll see what I mean once we get to the website. And the card has a RGBA background. So RGB stands for red, green, blue, and how much of it you want, you can use that. You'll have a number of values. And the A stands for alpha, and that is about how transparent or opaque the background is. So 0 being fully transparent, and then 1 being fully opaque. So we'll go ahead and go back to that. And you can see here, flex display and all and everything. We have the RGBA background. As you can see, it's going to be transparent. It's not going to be fully opaque. And we have our transition and transform. So our transform function is scale. So it's going to scale in, which means it's going to expand in all directions, as stated before. Our transition is 0.5. It's going to last 0.5 seconds, and it's going to ease in and out. So ease in out basically means that it's going to start slow, get faster, and then slow down again. But because it's only going to last 0.5 seconds, you won't really get to see it as much. And so now we have the HTML code for the recipe pages. It's about set up the same as the index.html. This time I reference a different style sheet, style2.css, and also a little bit of inline CSS. It has a container called card container, as I stated before, and under card container I have a sidebar this time, which houses information, which is the ingredients that you will need for that recipe, but they also use check boxes so you can check off on when you have these ingredients. So it's kind of like a personal note to yourself. And within the card div, I gave the card div a card front div and a card back div. So you go here, you can see that div sidebar in the card container here, check boxes, and with all the ingredients. And then we have the div class card, we have card front, which will display step 1, and we have the card back, which will display the content behind it. And so now we have style2.css. So this is similar to style.css with a few changes and additions. The card container has a flex display of column or a flex direction of column this time, and the sidebar has a fixed position. So having a fixed position essentially means that it will stay in that area the whole time. So when you scroll down, you'll still see it in the same spot. And I decided to place it 0 pixels from the left and 250 pixels from the top, which means it's just going to be on the left side, a little bit away from the top, a little bit away from the bottom. And so I also gave the card also has a flex display, and I justified the content, align the items in the center just so that the text will appear in the center. I decided to comment out the image box because I was deciding whether I wanted to keep it or not, but at the end of the day I decided to kind of scratch it all completely and left it as a comment because I felt like I didn't need the image anymore. So as I stated before, displays a step number, and when you hover over the card, it's going to flip on its y-axis 180 degrees and display the back of the card, which is the actual instructions. And so the rotation is going to last 0.6 seconds and it's going to ease in, which means it is going to start slow and get fast. And when you're not hovering over the block, I've set it to where it will rotate on its y-axis 180 degrees back to the front of the card. And I also decided to use back face visibility, which allows me to hide the back of the card when the front of it is, when one side is facing. So I decided to set it to hidden, so when the front of the card is facing our way, the back of the card will not display, and vice versa. So you can see the code here. You can see the transition is referencing the transform for 0.6 seconds. And so transform is here, and it's rotating on its y-axis 180 degrees. And you can see here, I use the back face visibility, so hidden. And here, where it says the card back, when I'm not hovering over it, is going to flip 180 degrees back to the front of the card. And essentially what WebKit is it allows you to do this on other browsers. So I think WebKit is good for Safari and other browsers, but don't quote me on that. And so here's what the finished product would look like. So we have the recipe pages, here are the cards, here's the image. So this is what I mean when I say it'll appear higher on the Z index in the container. So it's over here. And so as you can see, when you hover over these, they'll expand, and we'll get to that when we get to the website. And here's the finished product for the recipe pages. As you can see, we have the sidebar, the checkboxes, and the cards displaying step 1, step 2. And when you hover over these, they'll flip on their y-axis for you to see the actual instructions. And I did that for 3 different pages, 3 of the different foods. So that's the end of the slide. So we're going to go ahead and go to the internet. And so as you can see here, when I hover over it, it expands, it scales in. And then, so now I'm going to open these in different tabs. But essentially they all do the same thing. You're going to come here. You see the checkbox on the side. You can check on your boxes. And also, I also made a little bit of a change. I decided to add an image to the right side of what it's going to look like when you're done. So you can see here all the steps. The card flips, displays the steps, and does the same thing here, and the same thing here, and so on. And so when you go back here, I also have my summary page at the top right corner, or top left corner. Click on that, and here you go. So the leader is me, Dareus Morris. Project name is called Dareus's Go-To Meals. The description is a list of breakfast, lunch, and dinner meals I regularly eat. And the responsibilities were all me. I did everything because I was working alone on this project. And that is it for this presentation. Thank you for watching and have a great day.